This podcast is for you. Your co-hosts, Ben Dodge and Eric Huso at Effect Epic Consulting, believe that your potential is limitless. Tapping into this potential is how you can affect epic results in your life, relationships, and business. Welcome to the Principles of Epic Growth.
Howdy, howdy.
I love today. How are you, Eric?
Fantastic.
These are one of those days every week I look forward to when we get to record these. I really, truly do, actually. They're so much fun.
Yeah, liberating.
Yeah. So living free is one of our biggest things, right? Like there's these principles that we talk about are to help you live what we call a liberated life, you know? Today is by no means an exception to that. This is a really powerful principle today, and we're talking about forgiveness.
Yeah. We're going to talk about forgiveness not necessarily in a religious context, but in performance context, how this principle of forgiving can help liberate you in the workplace to enhance your performance.
I guarantee you guys out there listening, and because we've had many conversations with a lot of our listeners about this topic in specific, actually, but frankly, there's going to be you guys out there that, one, don't forgive yourself and you don't even know it, or two, you
don't forgive yourself.
Yeah.
Or three, don't forgive yourself.
Yeah, or your boss or coworker, you have some sort of grudge or resentment there, and you might not realize it, or you do realize it and you don't even see how it's completely crippling you. You know, you want that better job, you want the promotion, you want more money, you want all these things, and yet you're hanging on to this baggage. And forgiveness, in a sense, is the key to, you know, winning the race, so to speak. If you're gonna go run a marathon, and let's say Eric can run a marathon, I have a hard time seeing that, but let's just say he does.
Can we go with a bike ride, please?
So let's put Eric in the context of a marathon. And Eric, I'm going to say, because, you know, you have all these grudges and we're going to open your eyes to what they are, you're going to wear this 250-pound backpack.
And carrying a tire behind me.
Yeah, dragging a car tire. When we did do that in my street for a lot of years, by the way, we ran dragging car tires. It was
Good
awesome.
memories,
yeah. So think about it. Frankly, Eric's a beast. He's got a lot of strength. I know you could do this, dude. And I know you could end up finishing that marathon, but there's no way you're going to win.
No.
Like, there's no, I mean, even chubby myself could beat you on a marathon like that, right? As long as I don't have all that baggage, you know, if I don't have all that extra. So forgiveness is one of those things that's the key to freeing yourself.
Weight is key to speed. And when you don't forgive, you're just carrying baggage, carrying weight.
So hopefully today you're going to have the opportunity to really ponder about this, really reflect on your own life. There's, you know, forgiveness is all about relationships. So identify those relationships. You're going to have a relationship with yourself. You're going to have a relationship with everyone you work with or work for. You're going to have a relationship for your employees if you're a business owner. And obviously this goes without saying, but your own family, you know, your parents, your siblings, your spouse, your children. What are those areas where you can already identify something that you're just not letting go?
Yeah. This is going to be hard. This is going to be one of those things where you're going to be nodding your head, I agree. And if you're not careful, you're going to miss out on an opportunity to see where you're not forgiving somebody, where you holding a grudge is limiting the opportunity to influence and limiting the opportunity for your own performance.
That's right.
So you got to really be awake to this. Really be awake.
So there's a powerful story that happened a couple of years ago in an Amish community. And let's open with that. Many of you have probably remember this. I think it was, I want to say 2015 or 16. I can't remember exactly. A couple of years ago. We can Google it and find out for sure for you later. But essentially, an armed gunman, heavily armed gunman, was a milk delivery guy driving a milk truck. That still exists. And he goes into this small town near Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and he marches into an Amish community who obviously are unarmed people, you know, super
peaceful
and you know, just innocent, peaceful people. Goes into a school. He goes in with 2x4s and other large like wood objects with the intention, of course, to barricade all the doors shut. And he did. Barricades all the doors shut. Targets young girls and starts killing them execution style. Okay. The police respond rather quickly. Of course, he's already barricaded in there. By the time they break in, he's killed, I think, at least 5 people, if I remember correctly, wounded 7 to 12 more, and shot himself. How would you feel? I mean,
absolutely horrific.
What if that was your daughter? And
this isn't the first time I've heard the story, obviously, and just remembering these details just puts a pit in your stomach. It's awful.
Yeah. So execution style. I mean, come on. And I don't think there's a reason why the investigators haven't figured that out yet. But based on some suicide notes and conversations that he had, it looks like he had some sort of grudge for 20 years. So he was trying to get revenge for something that happened to him 20 years ago. How and why he picked innocent kids in an Amish community, I don't know that we'll ever know. But important fact there is he felt like he had to get revenge for a grudge. We'll have to circle back to that, I think, right? From 20 years ago. Amish community, before we get there, the mom, her name was Terry Roberts. The mom and dad were on record as saying that day, at least, there's no way they could ever face their Amish neighbors again. Like, they just couldn't even imagine, even running into those people. They had zero beef with the Amish people, and they have no idea why their son went and slaughtered all of them, all these kids. But they were basically just overwhelmed and heartbroken, and the news reports and the interviews of them are pretty impressive about how they just are heartbroken for their Amish kids, even for the Amish kids more so than even their own son, and just they were just absolutely horrified at what their son did. What'd the Amish do?
They forgave.
Yeah, they showed up in droves and forgave these parents, and the son who took his own life after he killed everybody. They forgave him. And it was a message the world still needs today. There are a couple of the Amish fathers were saying that they have forgiven the son for doing this, although sometimes they question that,
Yeah.
And that's real life. One of the fathers was saying on record on a news report that, yeah, I forgive your son, but there are days where I question that. Just to put the real rawness there, right? But the fact of the matter is they showed up in droves at the house of the parents of this son and forgave him, and the parents were just completely amazed by it.
Yeah.
Terry has since, there's one survivor, and she's in a bad way. One of the Amish girls is in a wheelchair, fed by a tube to this day, pretty vegetable-ish. She has to be bathed and fed, and and she can't do anything for herself anymore. And so Terry, the mother of the son who did all this, volunteers every week at the Amish community taking care of this survivor. And both sides, the parents of the murderer and the Amish community, have both reported that, notwithstanding this tragedy, the relationships that they've built because of this instance, you can't put a price on, is what they said.
Yeah.
How about that?
Yeah, you can see how this idea of forgiveness is reciprocal. When the Amish extended that olive leaf to the family, that engendered similar feelings and experiences from the family, and vice versa. And it's continued to grow over the years through that service.
Yeah, and if I'm not careful, I get really teary-eyed thinking about that. I mean, that's one of the most violating things that can happen, right? And they just showed up and forgave, and out of it created these friendships with the parents of this murderer on a level that, really is pretty unheard of. And I agree with them when they say that this is a message the world, kind of needs to see and hear. I agree. This is powerful. Also liberating. So this is why we're going to bring this up. This is obviously an extreme example, and yet even in that extreme set of circumstances, forgiveness was key to liberating all of the lives of everyone involved. So how does the mom feel? Obviously horrible, but now she's not kept in some shame. She's not, hiding away from the community. She's not out there just running away, taking her own life. Maybe, she's actually, because of the forgiveness of the Amish community, she's embraced by them. She's welcomed by them, and she's been allowed now an opportunity to participate, to help, to still live a life with it, as opposed to just hiding away, and vice versa. The Amish people could have had all of this resentment, and they could have just locked their community away from this family and shunned them, and they would have every reason to do that. And I don't think anyone would fault them for that, but they didn't.
Yeah, this experience is not using them. They're using this experience to enhance the relationships, enhance their experience in life.
It's powerful.
Yeah. So let's take that into business world.
Okay? Love it.
So Jim Collins in his book Good to Great identifies the level 5 leader that we've talked about multiple times. So the defining characteristic of a level 5 leader is humility. Now, most of the leaders in the world today that you'll read about in business books are level 4 leaders. They just are extreme performers. They get things done. They just incredible. But the level 5 leader, what distinguishes that leader and what makes it so rare is after that leader leaves, the company continues on that same trajectory of growth and excellence. Most of the level 4 leaders, when they walk away, there's a drop in performance because that level 4 leader was driving so much of the performance, okay? But the level 5 leader, this one who has this defining characteristic of humility, continues to have an influence and make a difference long after he or she has left the organization.
The culture is sustainable, yeah. So
exactly.
If you remember one of our earlier podcasts about the Navy SEALs and during BUDS, when there was the 2 boat crew leaders, they swapped out the boat crew leaders and they put the terrible leader with the really good boat crew, and the really good boat crew's performance didn't diminish.
Correct.
That's
level 5 leadership,
level 5 leadership
right there. Okay. And so if you're going to really embrace this principle of forgiveness that we're talking today, you have to be this kind of a leader where you're humble. You have to be willing to humble yourself. You have to be willing to see yourself as somebody who can do this and be this kind of person. So in the world, failure is one of our most efficient teachers, right?
No, for sure.
Okay, so from the time that we are infants and we're learning how to walk and we trip and we fall and we trip and we fall and we get up and we learn how to ride a bike and we crash and we learn how to ride a bike and we crash, etc. Those are just 2 simple examples of how failure is such an efficient teacher. And for some reason, when we become adults and we're older, we want to avoid failure. We want to avoid not looking good. We want to avoid not looking competent. And so we shy away from activities where failure is an option or failure is a possibility. But we have to remember that failure is one of our most efficient teachers that we have. And if that's the case, then we have to allow people to fail. We have to allow people to be challenged and make mistakes. And as a leader, we then also have to be willing to forgive people when they fail. We have to be willing to give them second opportunities and other chances to continue to grow.
Absolutely. So let's start with ourselves. How about that? Like,
always the best place to start. If you start with anybody else right now, if you're thinking, yeah, this guy really needs to work on forgiving, then you're off, right?
That's right.
You have to stay centered, like focused on yourself.
So we are our worst critic, or alternatively, I mean, if you're awake to trying to grow, you're probably going to be one of your own worst critics. If you're absolutely ignorant of your own potential and growth, you're going to think you're amazing and that you don't need to fix anything. Either way, you've got problems.
Mm-hmm.
So, so let's start with ourselves. We are often hard on ourselves when we fail, for example. And sometimes that can result in not believing in ourselves, which we'll save for another podcast. But what about liberating ourselves from our own shackles? So here's the thing. Anytime you don't forgive somebody, including yourself, all you're doing is putting another set of handcuffs, chains, weights, whatever onto yourself, and you're diminishing your own capacity. Your own potential is now limited. The only limits that we have in life, and this is what we're saying again, the only limits that we have in life are the ones we place on ourselves.
Self-imposed, always.
Not what our bosses tell us we can or can't do, not our spouses tell us what we can or can't do, not what the world's circumstances have given us, like, oh, I don't have enough money, I can't possibly go do this, or, oh, I wasn't lucky enough to be born into a family that sent me to college, or, that's all bullcrap, right? Like, the only limits that you have, as long as there's breath in your lungs, you can do something about everything in your life. You can do something about everything in your life as long as you have breath in your lungs. So the only limits we place are on ourselves. In this context, we're talking about forgiveness, meaning break down those barriers, release some of those limits that you've placed on yourself just because you're not forgiving yourself of your mistake. You're super overcritical about this, like, oh, crap, I might get fired because of this. Or, oh, man, I just not as good as so-and-so down the hall who does this. And, you start comparing and you're not, I mean, that's just not going to work. I mean, you might as well just, yeah. So forgiveness, let's talk, it's basically a resentment thing. The anti-forgiveness, the other side of the coin is a resentment thing. You're resenting something about yourself, or you're holding on to a grudge. It's another way to say that. And so forgiveness is the key to unlock those handcuffs, right? It's literally the key to free yourself of that. Resentment is like drinking poison and hoping the other person dies from it. Right? Yeah. We've all heard that a lot, right? Yeah, holding a grudge is like drinking poison. Like, let's say you hate your coworker. You're like, I'm going to really get him. I have this huge grudge against him. He's such a jerk. He keeps cheating me out of stuff. He keeps stealing my ideas and taking credit for it. He this, he that, whatever. That's it. That's it. I'm going to hold this grudge forever. I'm going to drink this poison. I'm going to hope he dies. What the heck? It just doesn't work.
So, let's go back to my analogy with walking, learning how to walk. So, looking back on yourself, do you think that you're less of a person because you learned how to walk when you were 13 months versus your brother who learned how to walk when he was 11 months?
So just for everybody's clarification, he's making those numbers up.
Yeah.
I'm sure I beat my brother walking.
Joe, let me know.
That's a good question. Okay. Yeah, absolutely not, right? Like, the fact is I learned how to walk. Yeah. Great, perfect.
And it doesn't matter how many times you tripped and fell in this process. The point is you learned how to walk. And if you take that analogy to life, so many times we will hold grudges against ourselves, we'll beat ourselves up because we all mature at different levels. We mature differently in our emotional state, in our leadership, in...
I'm not even remotely mature yet. Says my wife.
You're getting closer.
You're right, though. Yeah, we mature in all areas of our life at different levels.
Mm-hmm. And so that's why we need to maintain this growth mindset. So we did a whole podcast on growth mindset. And if you haven't listened to it, you want to go back and listen to it. Because if you're in the fixed mindset, then, you're in this idea that you're born a certain way and this is the way you are. And other people are born a certain way and that's the way they are. And you can't change.
That's right.
And the growth mindset is, anybody can change to do anything. And everybody changes at different rates and at different times. And we have to allow that. We have to give people space to develop at the rate that they develop. And
yeah, how hypocritical is that to want and to hope to be forgiven by everyone around us, and yet not to allow others to fail and to forgive them when they do. And again, to take just saying the word forgiveness is going to immediately put people down some Christian warpath of their definition of what forgiveness is. Okay, that's not bad. That's great. I'm a Christian too, and I totally believe in God. But what we're talking about is allowing an opportunity for something or someone to change and giving space for that. That's another way to define forgiveness.
Giving space for someone to grow.
Yep. And basically not doing your best to not let it bother you anymore. Like the Amish fathers who said there's some days we question that, but for the large part, they are not letting it bother them. They're moving on with their lives and trying to create opportunities out of that. In that particular scenario, it was powerful relationships with members who are not of their community, who are Amish, right? Who are not Amish members of the community, this, i.e. the parents of the murderer. And they've created this just phenomenal, relationships that they said they couldn't even put a price on. So it's allowing for space for something to change or someone, and allowing for that failure and allowing for it not to bother you. That's another way to...
Yeah. Allowing for that growth to happen with other people.
Yeah.
One of my favorite books is The 4 Agreements.
Yeah.
And when we're not forgiving, we're violating all those 4 agreements, but specifically there's 2 agreements that we have to make with ourselves to be free, according to this book. And one is you don't take things personally, and the other one is you make no assumptions. And so when we're holding a grudge, invariably we are making assumptions. We're making assumptions about motives. We're making assumptions about what this person's capacities are. And we're also taking things personally. We're putting ourselves in a position where they're doing things to us, and we're making unfair judgments of them. And so we have, in order to free yourself of not forgiving, if this is something that you struggle with, I really recommend you look at this book, The 4 Agreements, and focus on agreement number 2 and 3, which is you don't take anything personally. This is an agreement that you make with yourself, that I won't take anything personally. And you make an agreement with yourself that you'll make no assumptions. And the promise of the book is that you will be free, that you'll be liberated. And I've personally experienced that. Like, it is a liberating feeling when you don't take things personally and you don't make assumptions.
Well, I think that author did a fantastic job. I would suggest adding a 5th agreement. Oh, groundbreaking. Ready?
Ooh.
And that
I
is,
can sense a new book coming.
and that is, look, we're not perfect. So, and we know that we're not perfect. Nobody in this world is. And so when you're trying to live these principles and you fall short, because you will, then that 5th agreement you should make with yourself is to forgive yourself and to keep trying.
Yeah.
So don't make assumptions. Don't take things personally. But when you accidentally do, because you're you, and then don't let it bother you.
Yeah.
Pull an Amish dad on it, and allow space for you and for that to change, and then proceed forward like a bat out of hell for growth, and therefore allowing this whole process of forgiveness to propel you into a better direction. So make an agreement with yourself to forgive yourself.
Interestingly, the 1st and the 4th agreement kind of encompass what you've just said. The first agreement is to be impeccable with your word. We've talked about integrity over and over and over again. That is the foundation upon which you make all these agreements with yourself. Is I am making a commitment. I'm committed that I will be impeccable with my word. And we've talked about honoring our word when we can't keep our word. So we won't go into detail on that, but go back and listen to our integrity podcast for details on that. But the 4th agreement is to do your very best. Do your very best. And that kind of encompasses this idea of being willing to forgive yourself, doing your very best, recognizing that I'm going to do my very best. I will fail. I will make a commitment to be impeccable with my word. I will have circumstances where I can't keep my word, but I'll honor my word. I'll clean up that mess, and I'll do my very best.
Awesome. I love it.
It's a great book. It's a great read.
So, I'll give a personal example here real quick from an athletic perspective. A few years ago in the year 2010, that was the first year that Ironman Triathlon hosted Ironman St. George.
Mm-hmm.
I was pretty heavy then. You probably remember those pictures.
Yeah.
Anyways, Eric and I went and did Ironman. We talked about this before, how I tricked him into doing it, but that's not what we're talking about today. That Ironman was only held for 3 years rolling as a full-length Ironman triathlon. And for those of you that don't know, an Ironman triathlon is a 2.4-mile swim. That's a long ways to swim.
Yeah, it is.
You get out of your bike, or you're
especially for a sinker. Like me.
Yeah. You get out of the water and you immediately get on your bike and you ride 112 miles, and then you immediately get off your bike and you run a full marathon of 26.2 miles. So it's a total of 140.6. So if you ever see those little oval stickers on somebody's car that says 140.6, that's what they're referencing, that they've done a full-length Ironman triathlon. And so it was so hard. The triathlon was literally touted as the world's hardest triathlon at the time, full length at least, harder than Kona, which is the world championship, just a really difficult course, that Ironman had a hard time selling it out. And they had a 5-year contract with the city of St. George for hosting this, but they couldn't pull it together financially because there wasn't enough people signing up anymore. It was just too hard. And so they changed it the last couple of years of their 5-year contract to a half Ironman, at which point it's still ridiculously difficult, but a lot of people embraced it. And so it's still going now to this day as a half Ironman. So they renewed, obviously, their contract with the city of St. George. So I failed the full Ironman. I did it. I've been to the full length Ironman all 3 years. So has Eric. Eric accomplished it all 3 years. I did not. Still stings to say that. And here's the thing. So, but I learned from it. So the first year I finished, and the second year I passed out on my bike, and I was riding, and my heart rate got high, my nutrition was bad, all kinds of reasons and context for it. But essentially I passed out on the bike, and I took out a whole aid station, just wiped out the volunteers and the table. I wake up and they're splashing water on me, and they said, "Hey, we called an ambulance." And I'm like, immediately, "What'd you do that for? That means I can't finish." I'm like, as long as I've got breath in my lungs, I've always felt this way about, life, then I'm going to do something about it. So I get up and I start riding away. They're like, "You crazy, like you're not going to make it," and all this doubt and all this disbelief. And guess what? They were right. A couple miles later, I pass out again. This time I wake up inside of the ambulance. To make this story, I know it sounds unbelievable. It's a totally true story. The next year, so I didn't finish. I was hauled off on an ambulance. The next year, almost exactly the same place and almost exactly the same kind of thing. I didn't wipe out a table this year, the second year. Passed out, got up, kept going, passed out again, woke up in the ambulance again. And to my surprise, and to this day I still just kind of grin about this, it was the same EMT in the ambulance that picked me up the year before. He's like, "Dude, what's the matter with you?"
You know your lesson, boy?
Yeah. But the failure of not finishing, and I'll tell you, that really stings in the Ironman world. You don't
Because you're called a finisher.
Yeah.
That's what you're called, a finisher.
You don't do all this training to not finish. I mean, that's a blow to the ego. It sucks. You end up getting carted off in an ambulance, and now all of a sudden you're at the finish line for hours watching everybody else come in, and they're wondering where you're at, and it's just over. It's forever a DNF on the books. You can go look at those 2 years, 2011 and 2012. I got a DNF. I could have just been done. I could have said, "This sucks so much. I mean, this is 2 years in a row. Clearly, I'm not a good Ironman triathlete. I got problems, Or I could forgive myself for those mistakes that I made. First of all, I identified the fact that I made mistakes. I made some significant ones, with nutrition and some other stuff, and so. I figured that out and kept going, and I've since done, altogether eight Ironman triathlons and a bunch of other things, right? Cycling related. So it's the growth opportunity from forgiveness, and especially forgiveness of yourself and your own mistakes and your own failures is exponential. I mean, the things that I've gone on and done since then are really pretty incredible and remarkable. And I would never have even imagined the possibility or the capacity to do those things back in 2011 and 2012 when I was carted off basically like a loser in an ambulance. Now, I didn't view myself as a loser because I literally gave it my all, and I literally passed out twice and literally got up twice and passed out twice again. So I mean, I literally gave it to where I collapsed. So I don't really feel like a loser, but in the bigger picture I felt like, what did I do that I couldn't make it to the finish line? How come all these other guys are making it to the finish line? I can't, So you forgive yourself of that. You figure out where the mistake was, identify what the mistake really is, and then allow space for you and or that thing to change, and then use that like a catapult to throw you forward into a direction now of not guaranteed success, but a lot more probability of success because you've learned. And the failure doesn't haunt you anymore. You've cut the shackles off and you're still propelling yourself forward. Now, that happens with every relationship, with our spouses, with everything, with work. So here's a good time to ask a question. Where are you in your life, or what thing are you not letting go of? Like, where are you just hard on yourself? Like you think that you're terrible at this and that you'll never get better and that this will always follow you. Sometimes from a religious moral perspective, it's something you might have done as a kid and you're just like, it's just following you around. Like you just have this overwhelming guilt. Maybe it's the way you treat your spouse, or maybe it's how you treat your coworkers or your boss or your employees, or maybe it's that you just think you suck at certain things and you'll never get better and you're not forgiving yourself for the mistakes that you're making at work or career choices. It's a big one. I suck. I can't get a better job. I made a mistake a long time ago. I'm too old to make a career change now. I can't tell you how many times I hear that from people.
Fixed mindset, yeah.
So, embrace the growth mindset by forgiving yourself. Not that you made a mistake, by the way, but just forgive yourself for feeling this way and for thinking this way. and use that forgiveness like a catapult, like a medieval freaking catapult where you're strapping yourself into that thing and you're launching yourself forward for a new and better liberating life.
For those of you that know Ben personally, if you've seen pictures of him back in 2010, 2011, where were you weighing? 280 back then?
Huge,
300?
baby.
Did you ever tip 300?
I was too chicken to get on the scale, so I like to say that I was about 300 pounds, but at that stage of my life, I didn't step on a scale.
Yeah, so
I didn't want to see
280
it.
to 300, just by the naked eye looking at you. And just imagine the cost had you not forgiven yourself. If you limited yourself and saw yourself as a DNF, as a non-finisher.
Yeah, as a one and done.
As a one and done, yeah. All the amazing things that you've accomplished athletically with cycling since then wouldn't have happened. That would have been the cost. And you'd still be 300 plus pounds right now, and you'd be pre-diabetic, and you'd be shooting yourself up with insulin, and you'd be going down a different path than you are now because of that, and that would be the cost. Now, the same thing happens in our relationships with other people. There are people at work that we just don't see eye to eye with, that we don't get along with, that we then have a certain context of them, and that has a similar cost at work. Okay, it has a cost in our performance. Now, this happens in businesses all over. Like, you're not going to have a group of people where everyone just gets along perfectly. It's just so rare, right? So you probably have stories going through your head right now of, oh yeah, I remember this certain colleague, and like, oh man, I just hated this person. The person just walked in the room, I just wanted to just want to fight him, or just want to throw up, or whatever it was. But think of the cost of that. What does it cost when you have a relationship with someone and you're not forgiving them? It is tremendous. As a leader, you've got two people that work for you, and both individually are incredible. They're talented, they're gifted, they're hardworking, and they can't get along. It's like wheels on a car. One's going forward and the other one's going backwards. They're both moving, but they're moving against each other, and it just limits performance with these guys. And so if you're a person out there and you have colleagues that you just, for some reason, you can't seem to forgive, know that it's not only costing you, but it's costing your business. It's costing your organization. Significant cost. And are you willing to humble yourself? Are you willing to be the leader in the relationship and extend forgiveness?
So I just nodded my head for like 2 minutes straight there through that whole monologue, by the way, for all the listeners. Yeah, it's absolutely powerful. Who are you? Which one are you in that scenario? Eric really aptly pointed out, be the leader.
Be the leader in the relationship.
And that means in your own life.
Yeah.
Like, don't look to somebody else to clean your life up. Don't look to somebody else to clean up your marital relationship up, or your employment relationship up. Like, be the leader. The cost is incredibly high. So if you're the employee who's really butthurt that you got passed over for a promotion or a job or something like that to somebody else, and that other person who you think is a total, maybe is a total screw up. Maybe all the mistakes intimately that person makes, and yet they got the job. Is it possible? Is it just possible that other person is learning from those mistakes and experiencing a forgiveness mindset with himself, and whoever's in charge is seeing that and allowing that growth while you bitterly sit there and stew? I know there's all kinds of reasons to get passed over, but just bear that thought out with me a little bit, right? Like, is it possible? Of course it's possible. Who knows? We're not there. We didn't see it. Fact of the matter is whether that's true or not, if you're going to hold on to that grudge, you're already limiting your potential. I mean, there's just no way. Now, to you employers out there, to those of you that, and if you're an employee, listen up, but to those employers out there that have employees, it's okay to fire somebody because they suck. But do you do it the very first infraction? Right? I mean, what's your growth mindset like? The Navy SEALs say what you tolerate becomes the standard. That doesn't mean when a Navy SEAL makes a mistake that they just
They're out.
boot them off,
Yeah.
right? There's coaching, there's training, there's mentoring, and there's opportunity for growth. That's your challenge as an employer, is to balance that out, to know the limits for your business, and for, when the appropriate time is to cut loose. I've personally experienced this even very recently, and it's been a little rough. But at a certain point, the training wheels are off, and if the mistakes are still being made, then you wish the person the best of luck. You do everything, in my opinion, at least, you do everything you can to help them even find another job, if you really do truly respect that person. Because it might very well be not personal, but just business. I mean, people say that, but if you really respect the person as a person, but as from a business perspective, they're not a good fit, and you've given all the opportunity and the training and the growth opportunities to happen, and it doesn't, and there aren't changes, then you just got to let them go. You let them go. And in my personal experience, from my leadership style, I'll do everything I can to, I fired 2 people over the last 4 days. And in both circumstances, I've tried to help them get even jobs. I'm like, hey, I'm letting you go, but here's a couple of numbers of people that I think might hire you. You should talk to them. I've already talked to them for you.
They're your enemies, right? No, I'm just kidding.
No, and again, the employees, I don't know what they're going to do, but I can imagine that they might not even seize that opportunity because of the forgiveness principle. Like, I might have let them go, but I might have set them up for something even better for themselves. But if they're too butthurt about the fact that they got let go, if they're not embracing the fact that they weren't a good fit and that they made mistakes, then they won't learn, they won't forgive me, they won't forgive themselves, and they might be passing up incredible job opportunities that I just handed them, even though I let them go. Think about that. I mean, where are you on that spectrum of your own forgiveness in everything we talked about?
Yeah. They have to really be careful that they don't buy into the victim mindset. If they can keep this growth mindset, then this will be a gift to them, right? You're giving them a gift. So make sure that you're not falling into the trap of this victim mindset. Now, if you want to change a relationship with somebody, you've got somebody that you've recognized, hey, I've got a grudge against this person. It's limiting. I want to change this relationship. What we need to do is you have to first change the context. So every single person sees the world through your paradigm, through your context. And that's shaped and colored by your whole past experience of who you are, where you're raised, who your parents were, where you went to school, your religious background,
right,
et cetera, et cetera. All that shapes and colors your paradigm and how you see the world. And if you want to change a relationship, you have to first change the context. So you have to identify the context in which you see people. So if an old lady walks down the road, what is your context of that person? Is that, oh, look at that sweet, kind old lady. Look how, she's such a, or, oh, stupid old lady, in the way, slow, That's your context of age. You can go through this exercise with different religions. You can do it with different races. You can do it with different socioeconomic backgrounds, age, different kinds of anything. And you'll just become awake to the context for which you see people. So if you have somebody that you're having a hard time forgiving, you first have to identify the context through which you're seeing them, because that context will use you. You want to use the context, not have the context use you. And so first identify, how am I seeing this person? Oh, I'm seeing this person as really flaky. Yeah, whenever that person walks in the room, it's like, oh, here, this person's a flake. They're a showboat. This person's an ego. This person, whatever it is, you first have to identify the context. Now, after you've done that background, you've done that homework.
Wait, let me pause you there.
Okay.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but the context from a visual perspective is like drawing boundaries on what you think that person's capable of.
Mm-hmm.
So think about that. When they walk into the room,
you just box that person in.
Now all of a sudden you do not allow them for any room for growth. In other words, you're not forgiving them. So that's what we're talking about, right? So this context is important.
So now you have to change the context. Now you have to say, oh, maybe I made some assumptions about this person. Maybe this person isn't the same person today as they were 3 months ago, because 3 months ago they had some stuff going on that I wasn't aware of. And maybe this person has some potential that if I was able to be with them in a way where I'm not judging them, that I could coach them and I could help them and they could experience themselves differently than they are right now. And so all this just opens up possibilities for a deeper relationship, where a relationship where you can be the leader, where you can be the influencer, where you can make a difference. But you can't do it if you first don't change the context.
That's right. Let's wrap up with one last example here that most people are aware of, and that's the really famous person named Viktor Frankl. Viktor Frankl was a Jewish citizen, right? Captured in World War II and spent an incredible amount of time in a Nazi prison camp. He did not choose those circumstances. He was literally placed in chains and bondage and torture and all kinds of things. The circumstances that he was placed in, now imagine your own circumstances in life right now. Guarantee they're not as bad as that, but just whatever they are and however bad you think they are, your job, your lack of money, your debt, your broken marriage, your employees that suck, your coworkers that suck, your employer that sucks, whatever your context is, or your circumstances, I mean, let's go to Viktor Frankl. So he's here in this Nazi prison camp getting just brutalized and tortured. And he wrote a book about this. It's incredible. I mean, if you haven't read it, you need to. Why was he able to still maintain a level of happiness and, wait for it, freedom? That's right. I didn't hesitate when I said that, guys. He maintained a level of happiness and freedom in spite of being locked up like a chained animal and tortured in a prison camp. How is that even possible, to live happy and free when you're held by Nazis in a prison camp? Forgiveness.
He practiced this principle of forgiveness.
Yeah.
The context in which he saw the prisoners freed him and gave him the opportunity to be happy in spite of his circumstances.
Now remember, it's not the religious version, although I'm sure he experienced that version of forgiveness as well. This is the allow for opportunity for growth, space for growth, space for something to change. He exercised an incredible amount of hope in that as well. He used those circumstances as a catapult to propel him forward in some of the worst, most dire circumstances that any human has ever faced on our planet. And he was able to live free emotionally and mentally, live free in spite of the fact that physically he was totally captive. Yeah. That's where you want to be.
Yeah. So the purpose of our podcast, Principles of Epic Growth, is to help you identify and put into practice the principles that will give you the maximum potential for epic growth. And not forgiving is one of those weights that will just hold you back, will limit your opportunity for performance, and will just get in the way of you being your very best self. And so putting into practice the things we talked about today will free you. It's like losing weight prior to running a marathon. Your speed's going to go up. You're going to sense a greater accomplishment as you cross that finish line, knowing that you've done your very best, you've cut that baggage, you're running free.
I like the pirate ship. Come on, we're all pirates out there, or you should be, mentally, man. Get in that space where you're on your ship, you're controlling that ship, you're steering it around all over that ocean, and you're collecting all of the treasure you can possibly get your hands on, and that floats your boat, and you're happy, and you're pumped about that. No matter what the weather's like, no matter what your crew is like, it's your ship still. And so what are you going to do with your ship, right? Cut the anchors loose and sail away. Don't get stuck somewhere, because you're not forgiving yourself or forgiving your crew or forgiving, or blaming the weather. You know what I mean? Just be that pirate captain and be in charge and get out there and experience the freedom. And I do love sailing. We'll save that for another day. Experience the freedom of what it's like to be in control. All right, guys. Love it.
Have an incredible week.
Email us or call us as always. Drop us those notes. We love to answer your questions. Have a great day.
Thanks for listening to the Principles of Epic Growth podcast, your path to epic performance and life with incredible growth.